All right. What are we talking about? Joel, give us our agenda and let's get this going.
All right. Yeah. Well, welcome. This is episode 3 of the PolyMark podcast.
Well, it's not said. Give us our agenda. Just give us a rough agenda and then we'll go.
Yeah, rough agenda. We're going to be talking a little bit about the.
No, I mean, we're not recording.
Oh,
He's doing.
Just-
You can tell he's doing his recording voice versus
Yeah,
talking
doing
to us
his
voice. And you're like,
NPR
oh,
voice
shit.
comes right
And
up.
NPR voice,
that's
here we go.
recording voice. That's not normal voice.
all right. Well, welcome to episode 3 of the PolyMark podcast. I'm your host, Joel, here with my brothers, Matt and Andrew. We are going to be talking on a few different markets today. We're going to be talking about the Fed decision in September. We're going to be talking Russia, Ukraine, a few updates on some of our other bets. We're going to pitch it over to Andrew here first. He's got some information about the Fed decision here and what's affecting the markets.
Yeah, my bet's been on a bit of a roller coaster ride the last couple of days. I had bought in to the no change bet on Wednesday or Thursday. I bought in at 31. The bet got all the way up to 42. I remember it was Thursday at lunchtime. I sent you guys a screenshot saying, "Oh, you guys might have already missed the train on this one." It was up 25% already. And then Powell goes and starts talking in Jackson Hole, and it just starts plummeting. I got all the way down to 12% no change and 82% for that 25 bip decrease that you thought was coming, Joel. Now it's leveled out around 20% no change, 78% that Powell is going to drop the 25 basis points on the overall interest rate. I had bought in because I still have faith that Powell's going to do the right thing. I think we've seen inflation come back. Powell talks about how, Paul Volcker, who was the one that was able to really lick inflation back in the late 70s, who had really stuck to his guns with interest rates. We talk about how easy the boomers had it back in their day, but we don't talk about how when our parents bought their first place, it was like interest rates were in the high teens, and that was all so that they could get the inflation down. I think Powell knows he's got to keep interest rates high enough to lick inflation. I think inflation is going to keep rearing its ugly head, especially with tariffs situation not making itself any clearer with the deadline that Trump just keeps pushing back and back and back. Canada still hasn't, as we talked about in our first episode, still hasn't gotten its tariff situation sorted out. And even though Carney has now waved the white flag and decided to cancel those counter tariffs that he put in place back in March, I suppose. But, well, I was going to say, but based on what Powell said at Jackson Hole, saying that the time had come to at least look at lowering interest rates, it sure seems like both the markets and, of course, the poly market bet that we were looking at all think that a 25 bip decrease is the most likely outcome.
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting just as a summary here. I don't know if you can use that market generate thing on the PolyMarket page to just get like an AI summary here. And basically they talked about those potential interest rates cuts, citing rising job market risks and ongoing inflation concerns. So from my perspective, kind of almost contrary to what Andrew was saying, is if there is inflation, right, it seems like that's when Powell is going to want to cut the rates. So anyways, that's I got in at 66 or 65 on this one, and it's up to 77. So I'm feeling all right about that boring bet I made during the first week, but hopefully it won't bite in the ass. What are your thoughts on that?
So typically the Fed has a dual mandate, right? Where they're trying to keep jobs up and keep interest low or down at 2%. And, cutting rates typically can lead to higher uh, interest rates, right? So typically if, sorry, not interest rates, inflation. So typically, if inflation is going up, you jack up the rates to try to lower inflation, but you also lower the rates to try to increase jobs. So there's kind of this, dueling banjo situation where if the jobs market is not coming in great, which it hasn't the last print, but also inflation is starting to tick up, you're kind of looking at a little bit of a dual situation here, which is why I think the 25 bips just to kind of start in the other direction a little bit, assuming, people saying he's already late as far as cutting these rates is probably where most likely we're going. We've already seen Canada, Europe, I think Japan as well, have all already cut rates in the last 6 months. So that's where everyone's heading. Everyone assumes that's where the US is going to go. And I mean, looking forward, kind of a longer time scale, I think we all know where Trump wants to get, right? Trump wants to get a new Fed in, which happens early next year, and dramatically cut rates. And I assume the printing press will get turned on as well. And I think that's what Lutnick and Bessent, his main financial advisors have somewhat kind of pointed out is that, they talked a lot, Stephen Bezos did kind of at the start of the thing is you got to get you got to grow. I think they look at the situation fiscally, and their only way out of it is growth. And that's obviously a gambit, but that's the gambit I assume they've chosen. So you got to have to assume that while Powell has been fighting this stuff kind of all the way and fighting Trump all the way, he'll probably concede a little bit now. They just fired a Fed person today, and so he's gonna have half the board on their Trump appointees, and so yeah, and it's gonna be kind of like kicking heads as far as who's in control when these changes are gonna happen. But for now, I think it makes the most sense to go 25 bips. Why I don't think it's a great bet, but I mean at 10%, maybe it's not crazy. It definitely could happen. I don't think Powell's scared on his way out to kind of ruffle feathers anyways, so who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that accelerationist point of view, right, is the key that it's whether or not Powell's going to kind of go in that same direction, right, where we're getting out of the way and trying to grow the economy. But yeah, no, I'm liking the 25 bit bet so far. It's done well for me, but some of my other bets maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's definitely like I said, it is the consensus out there that's what we're going to see because people have been expecting it the last couple, and obviously it could stay as in even longer, but everyone assumes that this is when the market will start to move. I actually just did a little bet on Fed chair announcement. So there's a couple of different things you can bet. Who will Trump announce as the Fed chair in 2025? And I just put a little money on no announcement. 42 cents I got it at. Yeah, I think we know Trump's going to go in a different direction. No way that Powell's staying on. But at the same time, I also do believe they'll probably not get ahead of it. They'll probably just let things play out. And probably early next year, we get the announcement of the next Fed chair. I don't think it happens this year.
Also, you can one of the things that comment that yeah, ask for that's that there.
May.
Yeah. Certainly that but being a I don't know like the odds of we got it down somewhere still working. But that didn't so anything I don't think we did so and that
No, it's interesting that you said that. I just, because there's been a lot of chatter about basically Trump trying to get Powell out, you know, or trying to push, him to leave early or something like that. And I think there's been, essentially no movement. He controls half the board now. So I just assumed there was no push to kind of try to get it done ahead of time. Like if you're announcing it early, like if you announce it in November, you're almost asking the person to resign early. At least that's my understanding. Obviously, I could be incorrect here. To try to kind of get ahead and have the things go ahead of time. But so you're almost unofficially firing them. This was my interpretation, and I just didn't think that was going to happen. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's common just to get announced every year, regardless.
Now this is interesting because I looked at this market last week or so. And one of the things that people were commenting about is that, if you look at past presidents and past Fed chairs, that typically it is in the year prior to when they're supposed to go out. Because I think he's supposed to be out summer of next year, Powell. Or May, yeah. Well, summer, May, I think that qualifies. But yeah, and I don't know. So it seems to me like the odds are that they're going to announce somebody, right? So before 2025, if that's been the pattern in the past. But what makes you think they're not going to do it, Matt? Is it just because they're trying to, step off or stay off Powell's toes, I guess, and not announce it early?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I kind of like my no or negative economic growth in the third quarter as kind of a hedge to this bet that I have on the no change, because I do think that if Powell truly is, not due to political pressure, but due to his own conscience and what he's seen in the numbers, is deciding, no, now actually is the time to lower interest rates, maybe that means that he's seen the light at the end of the tunnel and it's a train hurtling towards us, and all the economic data that he's seen is indicating that things might be going real bad, real fast in the next few months.
Right. If he's got the early numbers on the negative GDP growth in Q3, or something like that, right? Not right. The trend line might be slightly different. Yeah, no, that is interesting. Sort of hedge bet.
I don't get. Wouldn't he be lowering the rates then? If the economic, see, right, there's different things to worry about, right? You were talking about inflation, but if you're saying the economic data is bad, like the jobs or the GDP growth, wouldn't he be wouldn't he be lowering the rates? Isn't that how this stuff works, to try to?
Right, but he bet no change. He bet no change on the other one. So it's a hedge, right? If he loses that one, then he'll be okay on the negative GDP growth because, he's doing the bit change because the early numbers were bad, essentially.
All right. Well, that's, the interesting stuff. Anyone have any other thoughts on the economy or any other bets around that? Checking back in on my Canada tariff bet. I still like it. I know there was some pretty big concessions by Carney, basically got rid of all those retaliatory tariffs, which I'm assuming was essentially a requirement to even begin initiation or discussions again, because my understanding was, they had sent delegates down and not even had a conversation with anyone real in Washington. So pretty embarrassing for Canada. Obviously, I think this is the start of the conversation. So, but I still think, it's at 80 cents, No, it's basically stayed the same. Yeah, down 2%. So yeah, you think it maybe would move a little bit with the dropping of the retaliation tariffs. I mean, I guess it does mean they're more likely to make a deal, but it's still hovering around 80%. Yeah, I think there's a good chance they don't get a deal done. Again, I don't really know what Trump really wants out of his relationship with Canada, but you got to assume it's complicated. And if they haven't made a deal with these other big markets like China and stuff like that, I'm not sure if Canada will get sorted out first, because it's also part of the whole brand new free trade agreement that U.S. was going to go through with Canada and Mexico. So it's kind of probably a comprehensive negotiation, and I still like to bet that it won't get done this year.
I mean, I think Trump is able to have his cake and eat it too on this one, because all the really important trade is covered by the USMCA, and therefore is not going to negatively impact America's economy except marginally, stuff at the margins that's not covered by the free trade agreement, whereas the majority of the stuff is. But as a symbolic victory over Canada, and to the extent that Carney obviously campaigned on all this during the election of fighting Trump, he gets to maintain sort of the symbolic victory of saying, no, we're keeping our tariffs on you, Canada, until you shape up, while still allowing most stuff to keep flowing across the borders because it's covered by the free trade agreement that he put in place.
Yeah, and I feel like that. I'm sorry. I feel like there's going to be retaliation, right? In terms of Canada is one of the only places who did these reciprocal tariffs, and like you said, I think Trump can it has the USMCA stuff protected, but then can essentially hold Canada over a barrel for as long as they want, right? It's possible, I think, they get it done before December, but it's like, I can see Trump, maybe they have a deal mostly finalized in November, right? But Trump's like, nah, fuck these guys, we're going to drag it out for a while and let them feel some pain over the holidays. And that, I'm like, when I'm looking at the 20-cent buy, it seems reasonable.
Yeah, and I agree with Andrew, and I think the having his cake eat it too part. I think the one thing he forgot is that the aluminum and the steel tariffs are still in, right? So,
and automobile, I believe.
Yeah, that stuff is huge. So yeah, sure, there's some American companies that buy Canadian aluminum and steel. That's why the tariffs are there in the first place. But these pain points can grow because these people are going to go to new suppliers and create new relationships. And so, the pressure point that these put on some of our major industries, especially in Ontario and Quebec, where all the power lies. I mean, yeah, I think there's real damage. I'm sure we're trying to kind of print our way out of it and give them some free money that Canada loves to give out so freely, but not in a good spot. And so, yeah, again, I don't know what Carney's going to do to get out of it. I don't think there's a good chance it doesn't happen shortly, and that's why I still like the bet.
I bought into this position as well, if I didn't mention that.
And elbows up has got to be like the stupidest campaign thing. I literally have the $20 queued up because I'm like, this seems like a decent bet. So maybe I'll throw that in there as well.
Yeah, throw it in there.
Fuck it, let's go. $20, baby.
The other bet I liked, kind of following back on some of our chatter from last week, is the Ukraine ceasefire bet in 2025, which basically comes down to this: is if it's going to happen, it's got to happen this year, probably in the short term. Meaning, I feel like, with him meeting with Putin and then meeting with all the European leaders and Zelensky a week later, figuring this stuff out, essentially the major moves that were needed to take place to cut a deal have all taken place. So if a deal is not getting done in 2025, then who knows when the hell it is ever getting done. And then this war might drag on for a few more years, which, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's impossible. It's obviously, that's the favorite right now. The favorite is there is no ceasefire. But at 25%, you hope stronger heads prevail. You hope that there is some middle ground and we can come to a solution. I know on the All In Pod, Sachs is talking about how, the vast majority of Ukrainians want a peace, a ceasefire, are willing to give up territory, all this different stuff. And it seems that it's just, the Zelensky and the European regimes that are, probably benefiting greatly from all this money coming in that are not interested in, what's that face? You don't think they're benefiting greatly from the money coming in?
I mean, I just don't like use the word regime. I feel like that's such a Tucker Carlson thing. Oh, the regime. Like, what do you mean the regimes? Like the democratically elected governments of Europe and Ukraine? Like, how is it a regime?
The European Union, whatever, the groups.
Oh, like the EU, like Brussels. If you want to
Sure,
say Brussels,
Brussels.
like, okay, fine.
I'm
but,
just
like,
saying.
yeah, I don't see it as
Okay,
a
whatever. I mean,
regime.
it's
like regime is not a word that I use for democracies. That's just
okay,
me.
sure. I don't think Brussels really is a democracy, but
Yeah, fair enough.
I get whatever. All the powers, European powers, they're the ones that seem to be, especially Zelensky's one seems to be understanding, the one that's, fighting back on the deal.
Look, I'm a hard no. I don't think this is getting done. The only way it gets done is if Trump strong arms Zelensky in Europe into doing it, which is a possibility.
That's what it seems like he's doing right now. He's obviously, I assume, there's a lot of strong army behind.
But I don't think he has especially with Europe stepping up and saying that they are going to spend the money.
Well, I think that's
to actually support Ukraine and to build their own.
I don't think they actually want. I mean, they don't have the money. Nobody has the money.
But right. But if they're saying that, right, like, do we figure that out right now? Like, are they, maybe in 6 months the money didn't come, but that's, past the date.
Well, I know Canada just said today or yesterday $2 billion more to Ukraine. Like, what the fuck is going on? We have no money for anything. But
put it this way. I just looked up the bets. Do you want to guess what it is, Matt? I just looked up the bets for end of 2026. You like ceasefire, yes or no? Do you want to guess what it is? It's 60%, and I still feel like I'm a hard no. Because
no, see, I don't think that's crazy.
After
I like 25%. I don't even know if I take, because I think if it doesn't happen now, it probably doesn't happen next year, right? Like, what? I mean, unless basically now we're waiting for major changes on the ground, which means continued fighting, escalation, people dying, and maybe some real changes in the battle lines going forward. Like, which sounds crazy.
There has been.
I know, but again, the understanding is that Russia's close to making it.
Did you see that clip circulating?
I was just gonna say, and there hasn't.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
I was just gonna say that there hasn't been any major territorial changes. Like, there's no blitzkrieg tank columns moving on either side of this war. We're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing to me, I watched this video, right, and somebody was like, well, what is the average American? They were talking to somebody, in the conflict. What does the average American not understand about the war in Russia, right? And the guy's like, you don't understand the territorial gains. It's like, we can look down the road and see the town that they were in 2021 or 2014, right? Like, it's not these huge gains. It's like not even over the horizon in terms of how far the Russians have advanced, right? And again, I think they are advancing. They are continuing to win, but yeah, it seems slow.
And that's why I think this peace treaty isn't happening. Putin flew to Alaska. He had the meeting with Trump. And then all the, the deals that get floated out there by Russia were all no-goes for Ukraine, i.e. giving them territory that they haven't even conquered militarily, including that big fortress area in the Donbass that's basically been there since 2014, and Russia's never really been able to overrun. Russia's floating it out there that they're going to need Ukraine to pull back from that as part of a ceasefire agreement, which, Matt, you might say that the majority of Ukrainians want a peace deal and are willing to give up some amount of Ukrainian sovereign territory to get it. I believe you. But if you ask the average Ukrainian who's seen their countrymen die for the last, was it going on 10 years total, right? Like, well, when did the little green men come in the Donbass? Like, Ukrainians have been fighting on that line for many, many years. And if you think the average Ukrainian would be like, are you willing to give up territory that the Russians haven't even conquered as part of a peace deal? I think the answer is definitely going to be a no.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, again, all these things are obviously negotiating positions, and where you end up is where you end up, right? Like, I don't, like, you know what I mean? This is Trump's, 100% tariffs end up at 15. I'm just saying, listen, I think major efforts have been made to try to obviously make the deal, right? You have Putin coming to Alaska. You have all the leaders coming to the White House the week later. So, I mean, these things wouldn't happen if people didn't think like we're close. It's my impression, right? Like, why are they coming if they're not close, right? I think there probably is a lot of details to be ironed out. There is a lot of things, and everyone's going to be pushing for certain things. Russia wants complete demilitarization and blah, blah, blah. And Ukraine's going to want security guarantees, but no NATO. America's going to want, Russia's going to want no. Like, there's all this stuff to figure out. And these things are hard to actually hash out. But if it's going to happen, it's got to happen now, or it's never going to happen, at least not in the short term. So that's why I like the bet. Like I said, I don't think it's a huge favorite, but I just based off what's been happening.
So
I mean,
that's the
position
interesting
this,
thing, Matt.
Worth a bet.
I was just gonna say, the yes vote here is the high potential return, right? I mean, I have the no, right, but I only got it at 67 cents, and who knows if that'll pay out, right? What happened with yours there, Andrew?
Well, I had a significant bet on no ceasefire by October 31st, and it got all the way up to 93. And at that point, I'm like, is there a 7% possibility? I suppose. So I sold my bet. But the fact that it was all the way up to 93 sure reflects that the markets are pretty certain that a peace treaty is not getting done, at least not in the next month.
Yeah,
end of October.
You said end of October
31st.
or beginning of October? Must be beginning of October. That's still 2 full months. That's crazy. I mean, I would sell 2 at 93. I think
right.
Take them. I mean, what are you fighting for the extra 7%, right? Cash in the chips at some point. Yeah. Like I said, I think it's pretty reasonable. I don't know. We can go into something else, but I think it's decent odds just based off the efforts they've been made.
Well, we could talk AI models. We could talk birth rate. What do you guys think here?
Talk about your birth rate bet, Joel. I'm curious to hear kind of your thoughts and if you have any like real data on it, or you're just saying this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I don't have any hard data. My bet was on the U.S. fertility rate being up in Q2 25. I took the no position, not because I had any particular data or anything, but when the no is 30 cents or something that I bought in at, I think I bought it at 35 cents. And so it's gone down a little bit. I don't know what the market seems to have some information that I don't, right, about the birth rate. So it's possible I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but I might be in this situation. But it just, at the 3-to-1 return, it just seemed, given that fertility rates are on a constant decline in the Western world, U.S. in particular, and I went and looked at the data, I looked at some of the past years, I looked at the trend, and it's been on a constant decline rate. Sometimes it stays the same, but in this case, if it stays the same, it's still a no outcome. And at 33%, that just seemed like a decent bet to me, given the almost constant decline. Now, the interesting thing that you guys brought up was the immigration and whether that's going to affect the fertility rate. Why do you guys think that? I guess immigrants have a lot more children, right?
Immigrants on average have higher children, right? We know a lot of places, basically, the growth rates are almost completely sustained by immigration, meaning not just
leave the
physical
term
sense, but also
is anchor baby.
But I don't know. I guess my real question is I don't know if there's been like changes on basically like who counts in that CDC, whether it's just is it just census data, and I know there's like this fight over census data already and stuff like that, but I mean it does make some sense if all these people came in the last couple of years and they're now going to be included in this report that there could be a change in the birth rate. That could just be all it is, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, and we don't have to talk too long about this bet. I just thought it was interesting, because to me it seemed at least like 50-50 at best, right? Like whether like going up seems unlikely for the birth rate given the historic trend, and so it just seemed like a decent bet for that.
Maybe it's just accounting for Elon Musk.
Hey, speaking of Elon Musk, I took the XAI having the top model position for December 31st. That Matt inspired me with, or I think I saw an Elon tweet where he was talking about the number of updates that XAI was doing to Grok, right, relative to the other AI companies, and they were 3 or 4x almost. So I don't know. I just never bet against Elon, I think, is the mantra, and so I took the yes on the XAI position, which was only 16 cents. It's down to 15 now. But what do you guys think there?
I also took this bet. I bought in at 18 as well, and now it's down to 14. He's gonna have to pull out the proverbial rabbit on this one, but I'm pulling for him.
Yeah, again, I think it's still a pretty reasonable bet. Like, a lot of the data says it's the best model. I know we talked about earlier how this model I think is a little weird and might go more towards video and other things, which I think Google has the edge in right now. But we also know Elon spamming this stuff all the time. And he has already mentioned Grok 5 will be true AGI and, you know what I mean, yada, yada. So, if that's coming out before December, that's the chance, right? Before the end, and that comes out and just somehow actually has real separation from the other models, that's the bet, which I think is definitely possible. But the market's probably not that crazy off either because it's hard to do.
Can I talk my highest performing bet? Well, sorry, you got more. That was a topic change. If you wanna talk more XAI, I don't want to step on your toes. So as I talked about on episode 1, I took out decent sized position, 357 shares in Arsenal to be crowned Premier League champions in 2025-2026. I bought in at 28 cents. It is now at 34 cents after 2 big wins to start the season.
Matt, I did have a question just because I made that $20 bet that we were talking about there.
Yeah.
What is the limit function that we were talking about sort of in the preamble here that nobody heard? Sure.
No, I think this is good a little bit to talk about for people that are just getting familiar with PolyMarket and using it. It is a true marketplace. So that means for every time someone is buying something at a certain price, say 20 cents, someone is selling on the other end for 80 cents. And sometimes there's this thing called the spread, which is basically we need to match a buyer and a seller. And without it, there's a difference. Someone saying, well, I'm willing to buy at 19 and well, I'm willing to sell at 21. And the exchange happens in the middle. The smart, and I remember when I first started using PolyMarket, not even realizing they had this function to limit sell or to limit buy these positions. I was like, man, when I actually pressed the button, that got significantly worse than I expected. And that's basically market buying, where you might be buying up, might be only a couple of sellers at a certain number, and it goes up and you buy more of that position. So if you're going to be using it, I would highly recommend setting limit orders where you can set the price that you're willing to buy at. It's not going to fill instantly. There's a chance you might never get filled, meaning that might never come down to your price. But that's okay. I think it's better, especially when it's some of these short, thin order books, than kind of not getting the price you want and getting screwed on the whole situation.
Also, if you're monitoring the situation and there's some breaking news on Twitter that's causing the market to move. You might want to buy in at X amount. You're not necessarily willing to buy 5 points higher as the market's moving.
Right, and that to be honest, if you're monitoring the situation, might be the one time you are willing to market buy, because you might be saying, "Oh, this has changed, right? It's at 20 cents, but now everyone's gonna see it's actually should be maybe be up at 40 or 50 cents. It might never drop down again, so you market buy to make sure you get it. And that's the only time you really should be market buying. If it's something that's a pretty stagnant situation that's going back and forth or flooding over time, you almost for sure you want to be setting a limit order and just wait until you fill it at the price you like. Yeah, Joel.
Yeah, I mean that seems to make sense, especially in like low volume markets, right? Because I feel like you're much likely to get if you do a quick no or a quick yes bet, right? Like you say, if it's low volume, there's not a lot of sellers. All the sellers may be at a or the bulk of the sellers might be at a different price than what you're clicking on in that instant, thinking you're getting a great deal, right? Does that make sense?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely in thin markets you can move it. So unless it's some of these really big markets, yeah, then maybe you can market buy. But in general, set a limit. And the other thing you have to think about too that's nice is, you could just put in what's some call stink bids, or basically a bid significantly lower than what it is currently, and basically saying, well, I'll buy this if it ever gets down there, right? You know what I mean? So if something's at 20% and you're like, I'm not sure if this is a good bet, but if it went down to 15 cents or went down to 12 cents, I was buy, you can put a bid in for 100 shares at that price and see if it ever gets filled. And if it never gets filled, it never gets filled, but it's not a crazy thing to kind of position yourself in some markets that you like but don't love, to see if they ever get there and then take that money. So that sounds like we pretty much wrap it up for the week, boys. I don't know if we have anything else, anybody else to hit up? No? Okay, well, number 3 pod. Good job, boys.
Never thought we'd make it this far.
We made it. Joel's out, I guess. All right. Later, boys.
All right, see you, bros.
PolyMarks box.